Hello all, this is the summary of a research in Vedic astrology that I have been supporting for the last few weeks. The problem statement is to gather enough data about divorced natives and try to see if there is a pattern there. So I have been involved in entering and analyzing some of the data, not for all of them. There are about 300 natives considered totally, but in my scope, I have got about 167 of them, of which 25 are females and 142 of them happen to be males. Right. Now, for each of these native, a set of attributes or parameters have been identified to be captured, which are relevant in the context of a divorce. Right. As you can see, it ranges from very simple attributes such as what is the lagna of this horoscope, then it expands more into the Navamsa and the Lagnadipati attributes. There is a little bit about the moon related attributes such as the Tithi and the Nakshatra, and then the Rahu Ketu axis and how it influences different points in the horoscope. The seventh house, not surprisingly, has a lot of data points lined up to be collected, and then there are other things such as the Mudakkirasi, Vedakan, then the second house being the family, house of the family, those attributes are being collected as well. Then there is Venus, not surprisingly being the Karaka for marriages, is also analyzed. So is Mars, and there are other miscellaneous attributes such as Pushkara Navamsas and Badaka, Maraka, Upapada, Mandi, etc. Right. So the data has been manually entered into this sheet by going through these horoscopes, eyeballing them, and we have tried to collect the data in as much standardized format as possible so that it helps in a programmatic analysis of the same. Right? And we have tried to speeden up this very painstaking data entry process by creating some Excel based lookups, but obviously a lot more could be done to automate the data entry part of this one. Right now, after all this is done, we have tried to create some very basic visualizations, because that is the first step to analyzing any analyzing any data science problem, is to make some visualizations. And we have categorized the visualizations again based on Lagna related charts, moon related charts, 7th house, Venus, 2nd house, nakshatras, and then a catch-all, which is the miscellaneous, right? We also tried to do a little bit of uh, analysis into the numerological aspects, just out of curiosity. Not much to discuss there, but probably that could be expanded to a bigger scope later. Right? So let's dive into the what the data says. Right? So there are multiple charts, and pie charts and spider diagrams and all that, but we are looking to see if there are any patterns that come out of the data that we have collected. Now, say for example, if I ask the question, is there any particular lagna that contributes to a very high number of divorces? By looking at this, you could say that maybe not. Kind of there's an equal spread of lagnas for all these natives, barring the fact that you could say that only for, say, the Aquarius lagna, the divorce rate seems to be lesser than what could be the average. Right? Now that is probably one small inference that you can draw out of this, right? But you get the idea of looking at the data in this manner. The D1 D9 Lagna Sambandha is a little bit more interesting, because you could see that a 5-9 relationship between D1 and D9 seems to create more divorces than others, which is a bit of counterintuitive given that the 5-9 is an auspicious relationship between D1 and D9 Lagna, right? But that's what the data says. Right. And again, the Rahu Ketu axis 1-7 is pretty much on expected lines, and the aspects on Lagna by malefic planets, again, uh, not surprisingly seems to contribute to the high number of divorces, right? So on and so forth. You get the point of what we are trying to do here. And uh, we also look at the Ashtaka Varga of the different uh, of the different charts, in one view. Right? Going over to the moon, again, moon there doesn't seem to be much of variance. In fact, you can see that the paksha in which one is born is really irrelevant in the context of a divorce. There's an equal 50-50 split right down the middle. Right? So that's the kind of insight that you get. In terms of Karana, yeah, maybe you could argue that the Taitula Karana has a slightly higher probability than the others, right? I'm not going to talk about the four Karanas here because they are less probable to occur in the chart compared to the other seven Karanas, right? So really the competition is only between the first seven Karanas, and out of which Taitula comes out to be a bit higher. More data could probably shed more light on this. Tithi Shunya, you can very clearly see that Leo contributes to close to maybe more than one third of the cases, right? Even close to 50% of the cases here compared to the other Tithi Shunya rasis, right? So that's a kind of insights. Now coming over to the most loaded frame of them all, which is the seventh house and seventh lord. Again, not very uh, clear trends here, except for the Ashtaka Varga of the seventh house, the Sarvashtaka Varga, where there's a whopping 128 out of 167 cases where the divorces happen if the Ashtaka Varga bindus are less than 28. Now, this is a clear trend and needs to be watched out for in divorce cases. In terms of aspects to seventh house, there's a surprise here because you could see that Jupiter aspect on the seventh house creates a lot of divorces. Now, I couldn't understand why this would be the case, but possible justification is because it's Jupiter aspect on the seventh house that first creates these marriages, right? And the fact that the Jupiter is playing both the role of a malefic and a benefic. Benefic in terms of creating marriages, malefic in the terms of being a functional malefic and breaking them by aspecting the seventh house. Right? That's the one that I could derive. So probably this Jupiter could be like a Badaka or a Maraka or a functional malefic for natives that is causing the divorces. Again, some interesting insights. Who's aspecting the seventh lord? Rahu, Ketu, Saturn, Mars figure prominently here. Similarly, seventh house, when it is occupied by Rahu, Ketu, or Saturn, or Venus, surprisingly in this case, which also kind of strengthens the point of Karako Bhava Nasha, right? So you could see that the Rahu, Ketu really play a havoc on the horoscopes when it comes to divorces. That pattern clearly emerges from different charts that you can see, right? And this will be further confirmed when we look at who aspects or who influences Venus more. And again, you see here that Rahu, Ketu, Saturn, as well as Jupiter's aspects on Venus create a lot of divorces. Now, one common denominator in all this is the Rahu, Ketu aspects on the seventh house, the Venus, and as you will see shortly, the second house aspects as well. Right? Another interesting observation that comes out of this is the Sun-Venus distance, where if the distance is more than the distance of a bhava, then the probability of the divorce also increases, which is in the lines of what we were taught in our classes, right? And so on and so forth. You could make some inferences. Venus combustion has absolutely no impact on divorces. There's a clear insight that comes out of it. Similarly, when it comes to second house, the Ashtaka Varga follows a similar pattern as the seventh house. The aspects by Rahu, Saturn, and Ketu, and Jupiter and Mars follow the similar pattern. And if you have to narrow it down, you will have to say it is the Rahu Ketu influence on the seventh house, second house, Venus that actually makes the difference here, right? And the rest are all kind of equal spreads. When it comes to nakshatras, again, there is not much to distinguish between different nakshatras. All of them are contributing in a very similar manner, not much standouts here, right? There are some miscellaneous data points as well, our analysis, and very interesting observation here is the Mandi in D1. When the Mandi is in Lagna or second house or the third house, they totally account for more than 50% of the divorce cases, as opposed to Mandi in 6th or 7th or 8th. Now that's an interesting observation which we would not have gone through without the data. You would have assumed that Mandi in 7th house could have been a cause for a divorce, but data bears otherwise. Right? This is the power of how data and visualizations can give you insights into what actually happens. Uh, Now, other factors do not have much of a say. Pushkara Navamsas is a perfect circle in the spider diagram. All planets being in, Pushkara Navamsas have equal weightage, so on and so forth. So nothing much to debate or discuss there. Little bit of numerology analysis was done to find out if there is any particular number of your birth date that contributed to divorces. Hypothesis what the number 7 could do it, but as you can see, there is not evidence to support that hypothesis. So you will have to assume that numerology, at least at the level at which it has been analyzed, does not have much weightage, right? So this is what it is so far. Obviously, this is 1% of what you could do when it comes to analyzing astrological data using the data, right? Or analyzing astrological uh, or analyzing life events using astrological data, right? First step is visualization. That itself unearths a lot of insights, right? Now, if you actually go into other techniques such as uh, proper feature engineering uh, and a proper analysis of the correlation of different variables with the output variable, which in this case is was it a divorce or not, and also by doing other techniques such as principal component analysis to reduce the number of features uh, and applying overfitting measures such as regularization. Using all these attributes, you can actually crunch this data to a very powerful format from where you can start discerning patterns, right? And I think that's a much more scientific way of studying data. It's a very tough one because forming of hypothesis is a very tough task, requires good knowledge of the domain, and the availability of data is another challenge. However, if you are willing to put the time and effort to surmount those challenges, then there's a lot of uh, intelligence uh, that is waiting to be discovered from this data. So hopefully this gives you a decent overview of what how data science can be applied to an astrological problem. Let me know your feedback or comments. Thank you.